Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Adam Caplan is back. We got a lot of football. We opened up the show on a Sixers game day with football today because, well, the football stories are very interesting. Howie Roseman spoke today. He was lucky he spoke, Adam Caplan, before Deebo Samuel said, I would like to be traded, because I'm sure Howie would have been asked 6 ways to Sunday about it. But let's ask you, Adam Caplan. Deebo wants out. Is it realistic that Howie would want to bring him in?
Well, it's realistic, Mike, good to be with you, that he'll talk to John Lynch, the general manager, and potentially Kyle Shanahan. Just to give you some background on what I've known for a bit. We all know, number one, that Deebo Samuel wants a new contract. He's eligible to be extended because he's now played 3 years. That's the rules by the CBA. If you're a drafted player, you have to wait till after your third season. So he fits in with that. In fact, we were talking about this last time you and I were on Monday. We've got Terry McLaurin, who's up for a new renewal, A.J. Brown, and a couple other receivers, particularly those guys. Those guys have shown that they're ready. They're some of the best young receivers in the league. So when it comes to Deebo Samuel in particular, he wants, partially because of what's happened in A.J. Brown too, they're seeing what's out there. They're seeing Tyreek Hill get a monster deal. Devonta Adams get a monster deal. Well, there's a reason for it. They played much longer, and they're more proven, and they're just great football players. These young guys have not gotten to that level yet. And my understanding is these teams really had not looked towards extending their contracts at this point, but the players are putting pressure on the front offices. That's why they're not showing up. I understand in the NFL, these not showing up doesn't really mean anything, although it's just a sign, hey, I want a new deal. It means something when they don't show up to training camp because they can be fined heavily. It's really punitive in the new CBA. Now, here's what I know about Kyle Shanahan and remember his dad, Mike. Kyle, like Mike, has personnel control. If he feels that he doesn't want to deal with this situation, he'll wind up trading this player. It's what I know from people who've worked with Kyle over the years. And again, to be clear, it's Kyle's decision in the end. He's what we call personnel control. In the end, it's his decision whether Deebo Samuel is extended, traded, or stays on the roster. So this one you got to watch. This one, Mike, you got to watch because he's a very unique receiver. Just to get into this a little bit in terms of talent, he's not for everybody. If you don't know how to use him, you're completely wasting your time. He's not a normal wide receiver.
That's what I was going to ask. So is he a fit for what the Eagles' offense looks like? With what they did last year, it's hard to tell. So does Deebo Samuel, is the juice worth the squeeze in this offense? I think that's the key.
Number one, you would have to extend his contract. He's not getting $27 to $30 million a season. I don't see that happening. He's not proven enough. That is a contract that won't be easy to get. His agency, I think he's represented by CEA. They'll want to look at what are called comparable contracts, but he's not at Tyreek Hill or Devonta Adams level. He's just not. He's a fun player, a pretty high character kid from what I understand. Been a good story of development. He's had an injury history, by the way, over 3 years, but very good football player. He's not elite yet. Elite is when you've done it for 3, 4, 5 years. He's getting there. He's really good. But the thing is, and here's the other situation, which we need to get into. I need to find this out. We're gonna have this tomorrow. I guarantee you for our show that we dropped to more. I'll talk to. I have pretty good 49er sources. Here's another thing. Does he want to run the football? Because if you look down the stretch, Mike, he had more rushing attempts than receptions over the final stretch of the season. I don't know if he's on board with that. He was great at it, by the way. He became more of a running back than a receiver. Does he want to do that?
Right.
That's another layer to this issue.
Yeah, he was I commented earlier, Adam, that he had 8 rushing touchdowns and 6 receiving touchdowns. They really used him in that role, and you wonder, if Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman are sitting down together, does Nick say, hey, man, this is what I would like to do with Rager, but I can't because he stinks?
Well, the thing is they try to it's funny you mentioned Rager's role, and they try to shoehorn that Deebo Samuel role. It didn't work. It's the kind of thing you have to work on during the offseason. It just was ridiculous. It just seemed totally out of place. It just showed up in a game, and the timing was terrible. It's the kind of thing you start working on when you're allowed to coach the players in May, and you go through the May camp and the June camp. You can't do it now. They start on Monday, but you can't do anything with them then. But look, the bottom line is the other thing is identity. Before we move on here, the Eagles have to figure out what in the world they are. We've talked about this with actually Greg Cosell made a great point a couple months ago on our show. If the Eagles are going to add 2 receivers, I think they'll add up to 2 in this draft, or add 2 by training camp, right, of somewhat of significance. Well, are you doing that based on you want to become more of a passing team? If you're going to be more of a running team, they don't need to draft a receiver early. That to me is really there's so many layers to the situation.
What are the chances of that, though, Adam? That they want to be what are the chances that they want to be a running team?
No, we've said that recently on Inside the Birds. They don't want to do it, but they have to do what's best. Sirianni did a brilliant job. He goes, it's not working. 34.6 times per game for the first 6 games throwing it. It was a bad mistake he made. He accepted that he made the mistake. He goes, what's going to be the best way to win? Take the air out of the football. The quarterback can't handle it. Throwing as much. That's fine. It didn't work. Take the air out of the football. You've got this great running game, potentially. Who knew it would be this great? And you got the NFL's best offensive line. And it worked. Great job by Sirianni and his coaches.
Well,
I love to know, Mike, I'd love to know who got in his ear. I love to know who maybe it was his decision. I should say that. I don't know that. It's his decision in the end. But did someone get in his ear? Who knows? But it was a great decision.
I know who it wasn't. Adam Caplan's with me.
The owner.
Exactly. Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com. You mentioned the identity. I'm not saying that Smith stinks by any stretch. I like Smith, but what's his identity in their offense? What do they want him to be? What kind of receiver do they view Devonta Smith as?
Well, he was terrific by rookie terms. I understand his numbers weren't great to close the season. There are reasons for that. We don't have an hour for this, but trust me, it was more on the quarterback and the amount of pass targets he was getting. In fact, if you remember, Sirianni and Roseman talked about that at the owners' meetings. I was there. They both said that their key players, that means Goddard and Smith, need more pass targets. What that would tell me, they want to become more of a passing team. I think that's pretty obvious. They don't need to say it. They gave you clues. They gave you sort of breadcrumbs. But he needs to get more. But you know what he is? He's a Z receiver. I know that Sirianni doesn't like saying X and Z. X is the single side receiver, usually a bigger guy. Not always. Terry McLaurin is the Washington's X receiver, I'm told, but he's not really physical. But you like what we call size protection. This is what coaches will tell me over the years. You've got a slender guy, like a guy on the other side who's tall, who could go and get it. He's physical. That's called size protection. It's a scouting term and a coaching term. That's what they really need. If they draft a receiver with one of those 2 first-round picks, you like to get somebody who's got some ability with physicality, or even later if they take one in the second round. Remember, they've got, as you and I talked about earlier this week, 5 in the first 3 rounds. They don't need to get a receiver in the first round. The fact of the matter is they need someone with size.
Yeah, because I guess when people think of, hey, is Smith a number 1 receiver, meaning like he's that guy, like he's not like when Julio Jones was in his prime or Jamar Chase last year. He's not that type of number 1 receiver, but did they look at him as a number 1 option?
They don't need him to be. They need him to be 1 or 1A with Goddard. Both will share the football. They're right. But again, we haven't got to the draft yet. As things stand now, if they didn't add a significant piece of receiver, which would be truly shocking, that would I'd pull my hair out if that did. If they wound up not having a significant piece of receiver, whether it's via trade, because a kid, we outlined on weeks ago, their offer to Allen Robinson was not as competitive as people think. It was a fair offer, but it wasn't anywhere close to what he got, $15.5 million a year. Mm-hmm. And we know about the Calvin Ridley attempt to trade for him. They would have gotten him had they not had the off-the-field issues. So they've already told us they're trying to get a significant piece of receiver. If they get that, that means that Smith's targets won't be quite what you might think they would be, which tells me they think of him as 1A, not number 1.
Adam Caplan, we know that a lot of people looking at this draft and wondering, as always, can they trade up? Can they move up? If they trade up, I think we kind of think a corner would be the trade-up position. That would be the spot. And you have a list of guys in the last 20 years that teams have traded up for. So is the juice worth the squeeze there to make that move?
It's very interesting. So I'm going to go back to March. We have emails that we get from our subscribers or listeners, so to speak, whether it's on YouTube or pod version, or they put them on our Facebook group for Inside the Bird. So anyway, I'm like 4 or 5 people sent the same question in a variety of ways. Hey, what's the likelihood of they be successful if they trade up for a corner? And then one guy said, hey, what's it been like the last 20 years? So we went out and got the information. Mike, I got to tell you, we're talking about this tomorrow, but I'm just going to give you a little Cliff Note version. The success rate is much better than I thought it would be. But the funny thing is, over the last 20 years, there have only been 20 corners taken the top 10 as a top 10 pick. So over the last 20 years, on average of 1 corner in the top 10. And there's definitely a history of success. It just varies. Like last year, now again, we don't know yet on J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain, but Surtain in particular was off to a good start. He had a very good rookie season. He was 8th overall. And by the way, the Eagles would have taken him if they didn't trade up. They would have taken him. J.C. Horn was 1A for them, we're told. We reported it at the time. They really like Horn, but they had Surtain higher. By the way, Horn looked great before he broke his foot. In fact, talking to the Panthers, he was maybe the best player in training camp on either side of the football. He was absolutely great, and he broke his foot in a House of Horrors game at Houston when they lost McCaffrey and Horn. 2020 doesn't look good. C.J. Henderson was traded. So that's a miss by the Jaguars. And Jeff Okudah, he suffered a significant injury. Now they have a new defensive coordinator, from last year. Denzel Ward, in 2019, there wasn't one in the top 10. Denzel Ward, a home run. None in 17, none in 15, none in 6, 7, or 8. So, Mike, it's not one where typically, and this is what fans had asked, and they're right about this, typically you don't take a corner in the first round, top 10. However, when you do, it better be an elite player, or you're probably not going to get what you wanted. That's probably the thing. We got a ton of we're going to spend probably on this subject 15 to 20 minutes on this for tomorrow's show, but I just want to give you a little snippet. There are a lot of misses because the valuations of these players. I think we all knew Eli Apple was not a good football player when he was drafted. There were significant concerns about him before he was drafted, yet the Giants still drafted him in the top 10 at 10 overall. When it doesn't look good, it won't be good. That's probably my story for the top 10 at cornerback.
So if you are looking at the pre-draft needs, would you put cornerback at number 1 still on that list?
Yes. Okay. So what we did is, Mike, we reshuffled our deck for Eagles team needs because we had to really take a deeper look at this. Now, as you and I speak now, we're 8 days from the draft. Yeah, I would say, just to follow up from last week, now we've actually ranked them. Corner is still, and again, it's the draft. We're talking over the next 3 to 4 years. What are the Eagles' biggest needs? Because the draft is not about this year. It's about 15 to 20% this year. The rest of it's for the future. Whereas most often, not always, more often than not, your free agency is just for this year, maybe next year if you're lucky. So right now, cornerback, as we said many times, they need not 1, they need 2 by the time we start a training camp. Now, 1's got to come out of this draft. You'd like to get 2 because Slay is 31. He turns 32 this January. And they don't have anyone to start opposite him. They have a bunch of 4s and 5s at corner. The question that then becomes, is the second guy a veteran that as a placeholder? They've had a history of doing that. They've not shown the commitment at cornerback to spend a couple high picks in doing it. We felt this. We've said this in February. We still say it. We do believe they're going to do some significant corner. We could wind up being wrong, but just our spidey sense would spell that. What's interesting, we have safety at number 2, Mike. What's interesting is, once again, and they did this and they hit home runs with Malcolm Jenkins, as you know, and Roddy McLeod. It's rare that you get these type of guys in free agency. Those are home runs. Can't count on that. They tried it again with Marcus Williams. He decided against the Eagles' offer, which was almost to the dollar, we're told, of what he got with Baltimore. So, Mike, does this tell you? I'm going to throw this back to you. Does this tell you they're going to ignore the safety position and just fill it through free agency?
He was asked about that today. Roseman was. I mean, he did get asked about safety specifically. I don't know that he really answered the question. But, yeah, he said we are He essentially said we got guys on our roster that we're happy with, which I don't know that he really wants to go with Kayvon Wallace and Ande Chachere in training camp and let them battle it out, right?
Chachere is a really good special teams player. In fact, as exclusive rights free agent, they gave him some guaranteed money, which is surprising. But no, although we've said this, and Greg Cosell helped us, Jason Devon helped us, Quentin Michael helped us last fall. We all know that Marcus Epps really should be starting. He needs to be playing more. He's been a great story of development.
So are they good enough with Marcus Epps and Anthony Harris starting?
But Harris was very average. They need someone younger. Marcus Williams would have been that guy. They would have been great shape at safety. So here's what it tells us to move on here, Mike. They clearly want to do something significant at safety. We don't need a guess. They're telling you by trying to sign Marcus Williams. They already gave you the answers. They tried to do it. They were going to pay him $14 million a year. Our understanding is their offer was somewhere around the $14 million a year range, which is what he got from Baltimore. So they're already telling you they want to do something significant at safety.
All right. So the question is, is it trade up for a safety then?
Well, I don't see that. That's not been their deal.
Right.
That's just not been their deal. They did it. They've done it since 2010. They spent 2 second-rounders. They completely missed with Jaquan Jarrett Temple, who's a great tackler but couldn't cover you. And they actually, people don't want to hear this, but Nate Allen, I think they actually got it right. I was at the game at Giants Stadium when he tore his patella. He probably would have made it. He wound up playing for the Dolphins, I think, and Raiders, but he was never the same since the injury. I don't blame them for that one. They completely botched the Jaquan Jarrett. You never draft a box safety early. You just don't. They learn from that. And Kayvon Wallace, he hasn't really shown much, Mike, in the first years of the fourth rounder. So they're going to do something big at safety.
They had a safety. They had a safety. He's in Buffalo.
I know.
Jordan Poyer.
Oh, you talking? What's that?
Poyer. They drafted him in the 7th round.
Here's the thing about Poyer, though, and I'll defend them. Nobody knew what he was back then.
I kid, but I'm saying they did. He was the guy that was here that is playing well.
Eric Rowe, too, by the way. That was a dumb mistake they made. They never should have listened to Jim Schwartz. They should have kept him. Eric Rowe has made his career now. He got a nice contract as a safety with a nice extension with the Dolphins. That was a mistake. They never should have moved it.
Yeah. All right, Adam Caplan. Real quick, you take a look at the future, some of the competition for the future here. Linebacker, running back, tight end. This is still a spot where I feel like you're looking maybe a little deeper in the draft. I feel like the linebacker first-round thing is like a pipe dream.
No way.
But those spots, I'm interested to see what the depth and competition look like there.
Mike, in my career, 19 years, I've never seen a team more year-to-year at linebacker. They just don't believe in spending value at linebacker. They tried it with Michael Kendricks. They nailed that one. Was it 12 years ago? 11 years ago? They got that one right, but that was a long time ago. They missed on Matt McCoy was his name?
Yep.
I think. It was too small.
How about Andy Studebaker's name and Chris Gokong getting thrown out there today?
Yeah, Gokong was the third from Cal Poly. Yep. And then Studebaker, what was he, a third rounder, fourth rounder? I don't remember.
He might have been a little deeper than that, but I remember Studebaker.
Nevertheless, they just don't believe in putting what they do is, and they've had some successes, they'll spend money in free agency, not at high value. So to move this along, Mike, to finish up here, no, I don't expect them to spend an early round linebacker. It would not surprise me at all if they don't even draft one. Why? Kaiser White, they really, really like him. They think it could work here. They think this could be more of a one-year situation. And Davion Taylor did some really good things last season. He couldn't stay healthy. We had a scoop a couple months ago. They actually changed his diet. He's into yoga or something like that. Changed some stuff up, so we'll see. But they only use 2 linebackers anyway. Mike, why would they spend an early pick on a linebacker? It would go counterintuitive to what they've done. But I would love it because it would show me that they're open to doing new things.
Kenny Gainwell said he's ready to have a big year. Should we believe him?
It's not his fault. Now, he had a decent season, but they need to use him more as a pass receiver, more on explosive plays, slot, a little bit out wide. No, folks, he's not a slot receiver. Enough of that stuff. But he's explosive. They got to figure out a way. The coaches have to figure out a better way to use him. That's what I would say.
Yeah, his quote was, "I'm trying to go into year 2 and go crazy." So we'll see.
Ooh, I like it, man. This was my guy before the draft, and It was kind of funny because I didn't think he lasted the 5th round. Boy, I didn't expect that. But remember, though, before we get out of here, remember they made him a short yardage back. Remember earlier in the season? That was really surprising.
Yeah, he got a lot of touches early. They kind of phased him out, then they brought him back. All right, Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast with all the draft news, great insight and intel leading you up 8 days away to the NFL draft. We'll have plenty more right here on Football at 4. Adam, thank you, man.
Hi, man. See you.
He'll be back on Friday. Andrew tomorrow. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. We'll get Andrew's thoughts tomorrow on some more draft stuff. We'll talk safeties with him, as Adam just brought up, that's the spot. Because what Howie Roseman said today regarding the safety position says, well, I think we have other defensive backs there too. We drafted Kayvon Wallace. We have 2 guys. We brought Andre Chachere in here from Indy, and we have Jared Maiden here as well. And that's even before the draft. We have a long time until we play a game, but we like those guys. I got news for you. Those guys aren't starting in September.